So, since the news broke yesterday, I've had a number of messages, Facebooks, whatever, from people wanting to discuss the World Boxing Super Series, which, for those of you who don't know, are 2 new tournaments set to be launched later this year, potentially as early as September, which are being run by a consortium involving Richard Safer and Sauerland. And essentially, these are 2 8-man tournaments in a sort of knockout format, so 4 quarterfinals, 2 semi-finals, 1 final, in 2 separate weight divisions to compete for a total prize fund of $50 million, otherwise known as around, $20 million. As $25 million per tournament. The weight classes haven't been completely defined yet, although there are strong rumours, and I'll come on to that later in the video. And I really wanted to talk about this. First and foremost, this is positive news. As boxing fans, we like these sort of initiatives. We like something that adds fresh blood into the sport. We like something that, makes fights happen and creates intrigue. And it's good to think outside of the box. It's good to do something a bit different to the norm and to come up with, something that's really going to catch people's attention, which this is going to do. I think some boxing fans are being over-enthusiastic to this news because there are a lot of problems with tournaments in boxing, which I'll come on to later on in the video. And I think some people are over-speculating as to what these tournaments are going to involve. With tournaments in like the UFC, for example, I presume it's easier to run. But in boxing, you've got so many different promoters, so many different governing bodies, etc., that it can be a bit of a logistical nightmare organising these tournaments. So, I've had a lot of messages from people saying, oh, could we have a heavyweight tournament with Fury, Wilder, Joshua, Hay, Bellew, Parker? Could we have a welterweight tournament with Manny Pacquiao, Keith Thurman, Kell Brook, Errol Spence? For me, those fights aren't going to happen. So $50 million split between 2 tournaments, $25 million per each tournament, is clearly a huge amount of money. And that's an amount of money that is going to appeal to 95% of the boxers that we know and love. It's not, however, going to appeal to the top 1 or 2% of the sport. $25 million split between 8 fighters, each of whom may have to fight up to 3 times. That sort of money isn't going to make guys like Anthony Joshua or make guys like Manny Pacquiao turn up and fight. Realistically, those guys are at a stage now where they're looking to achieve well in excess of $10 million per fight. So whilst this is mega money, I don't think it's necessarily going to be the money to draw out the stars in the most fashionable divisions. And for me, the most fashionable divisions, definitely the heavyweights, followed closely by the welterweights. I've heard a lot of rumours that the 2 divisions that are going to be selected are the light middleweight division and the cruiserweight division. And if that's correct, I think these are truly fantastic choices from the organisers, because those are divisions where, with that £25 million prize pool, you could attract the creme de la creme of the talent in those divisions. That's going to be appealing money to all the guys at the top of those divisions. I mean, let's look at light middleweight. Who are the top light middleweights in the world? I'll just throw a few names off the top of my head. Demetrius Andrade, Charlo, the one who's staying at 154, Erislandy Lara, Austin Trout, the winner of Liam Smith, Liam Williams. These are all guys who, for me, are going to show up and want to fight for amounts of money like that. They really are. In the cruiserweight division, Alexander Usyk, Marco Huck, Bradis, Gassiev. These are not guys who are earning mega bucks. These are not guys who are earning Manny Pacquiao money or Anthony Joshua money. They're well established as the best fighters in their division, but maybe they don't have the commercial appeal of the heavyweights or the welterweights. So what I'm getting at is, from a hardcore boxing perspective, you could get real exciting tournaments with the 8 best fighters in their division if you went for those 2. If you went for heavyweights, guys like Anthony Joshua, they're not going to fight for that sort of money. They're not going to submit themselves to fighting on set dates and set venues, for set positions when they've got the world at their feet. It's just not going to happen. So if you did it in the heavyweight division and you had to have 8 fighters, I suggest that guys like Joshua, Fury, Wilder aren't actually going to go forward for it. And I think you're probably going to get the second tier, the second tier of fighters. You're going to get guys like, guys who are maybe struggling to get fights, guys who are maybe lacking momentum, like perhaps Andy Ruiz or Bryant Jennings or Tony Thompson. You're going to get those sort of names rather than the Joshuas and the Wilders of this world. So I think the organisers are best off to focus on divisions where that amount of money can hold the sway and where the guys will be more prepared to fight each other. And I think guys like the light middleweights and the cruiserweights are a perfect platform to start this off. So I think in terms of organising that, that's one of the key points they've got to hit, because this tournament is, for me, going to lose interest if we're talking about the second tier of fighters. Don't get me wrong, it would still be interesting, but if, for example, 8 heavyweights fought it out and Bryant Jennings was voted the top, won the tournament and was the top heavyweight in the planet, for me, it would still be entertaining, but it wouldn't be as entertaining because Bryant Jennings has already been handled by the likes of Vladimir Klitschko and Luis Ortiz, etc. So, for me, light middleweight and cruiserweight, if they do it, makes sense. The other problem with tournaments, and people who remember the Super 6 may have memories of this is a combat sport. Injuries happen all the time, and a lot of these top fighters, what you actually find is when they get to that World Championship level, they're only fighting once or twice a year. Now, my understanding is that organisers are looking to kick this off in September and are ideally looking to have the tournament finalised before we get to the summer of next year. So essentially, you're looking for quarterfinals September, maybe semi-finals January, maybe finals May time, and that's a lot of activity. And what happens in boxing? Someone punches someone and breaks their hand. Someone gets punched and gets cut and is out for a while. There's injuries in sparring. I mean, you guys know how brutal a sport boxing is. And then what happens is you're in an awkward position. So, I don't know, someone's had, let's say, fighter A and fighter B have had a quarter-final fight, and fighter A wins and then gets an injury. Do you substitute in? Do you put fighter B back in the tournament even though he took a loss? Or do you bring in another fighter to take the place of fighter A? Do you bring in a new fighter to fight in the semi-finals and therefore allow that fighter, who's presumably a lesser name because he wasn't included in the first place, to go straight into the semi-finals? It's a difficult concept there. It's a difficult concept. You've also got the idea of people holding belts. Will belt holders want to go in a tournament? Will belt holders maybe have to fight in non-title fights if they're asked to fight against someone who isn't ranked in their governing body's top 15? There's all sorts of questions like that. And it's going to mean that these things are a more complex nightmare really to solve. As for broadcasters, locations, understand that the aim is to have half of it in the US, half of it internationally. And again, how's that going to work? What if a fighter's got a huge broadcast deal in one part of the country, like, for example, Vladimir Klitschko has in Germany, and they're asked to fight a fight at a time that doesn't work out for one of the broadcasters? I'm sure these are things that can be worked around and organised in advance, but what I'm getting at is I think we should slightly temper enthusiasm from some boxing fans here, because whilst I think this is a great idea, and whilst I'm fully behind it, what I don't want is expectations to be raised from the beginning. Because if people in their heads are thinking, fantastic, we're going to see Pacquiao, Thurman, Brooks, Spence, and Bradley and all of those guys square off, I just think people will be disappointed if we start off with that as our mindset. I think realistically, we've got to accept that in any sort of boxing tournament, there's going to be logistical issues, there's going to be date issues. And I really think whilst $50 million as a headline figure sounds like a mega amount, you've got to remember that that's essentially a number to be split between 16 fighters, 8 between each division. That works out as what? Just over $3 million per fighter. Now, $3 million per fighter it's a decent amount, but a lot of these big name fighters earn well in excess of $1 million a fight. Now, I'm assuming the prize money ramps up, so the winner, presumably the bigger names, will get the weight of the money. But nevertheless, some guy like Manny Pacquiao isn't even going to step in the ring for a quarter final for $1 million. So I think it's just something to look forward to, and it'll be fascinating to see how they do it. Richard Safer is a highly regarded guy in the sport of boxing. The Sauerlands have lots of experience with this sort of thing up from the Super Six. Perhaps there's been plenty of lessons learned. I'm looking forward to it. I think it will add some new dynamics, definitely. If it is the light middleweight and the cruiserweight division, I'm not sure we've got any cruiserweights who are going to go forward for it. Certainly don't think Tony Bellew will go in for it, given recent successes. He's one of the guys I'd now actually put in the category of probably wouldn't be interested for that level of money, believe it or not. In the light middleweight division, certainly I think the winner of Liam Smith versus Liam Williams has a great opportunity to throw themselves into the mix. And if Liam Williams is victorious, that'll be money that he's never had in his career before. If Liam Smith is victorious, I'm sure he got a decent payday for the Canelo fight, but realistically that's going to be a far bigger opportunity financially for him than he's had throughout the majority of his career. So I think it's a good thing. I'm really looking forward to it. I like innovation. I like things that, approaching things differently. And I think this is a way of generating interest. I think it is a way of building hype behind certain fighters. I think people will be more likely to tune into a Bradis versus Gassiev fight, two fighters who they may not have heard of, if there's the opportunity to follow their stories throughout the tournament. So I think it's a really good idea. I like it. I support it. I'll be behind it. I'll cover it on the channel all the way. I just think enthusiasms need to be tempered, because all of the talk about dream tournaments and ideal lineups and ideal divisions, if I'm honest, I think it's only going to lead to disappointment, and I think it's only going to lead to us scratching our head when the eventual divisions and that sort of thing are announced. But let me know your thoughts, guys, in the comment section below. Is this something you're looking forward to? Do you think tournament forms work in boxing? Drop your thoughts below. If you've enjoyed the video, please take the time to hit the thumbs up button, and if you're new to the channel or you haven't done so before, do take the time to subscribe. Many thanks indeed for watching, guys. I hope everyone's doing well.